clicking the button, pulling up the notes. There we go. Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance, weekly scrap number 136. I had one of my firefighter dreams come true because my phone rang, and when I looked at it on the caller ID, it said Ray McCormack. And so if he is back on the scrap for episode 136. If you are into the job at all, then Ray needs no introduction. He just recently retired after a 38-year career with the FDNY. I could list everything this man has done, but it would take up the entire scrap. He teaches, he speaks, he keynotes across the country. He writes. He is passionate about improving extinguishment culture. I'm a little excited for this conversation. Ray made a post on Facebook, and it got some wheels on it. And he said he wanted to come on this scrap just to answer questions about that post. So absolutely excited for this. My brother, Ray McCormack, welcome to number 136.
Thank you, Corley. It's very generous of you to have me on. Your intro is 100% correct. I did a post on Facebook a little while back, and it was starting to blow up. And I knew why, because the subject matter was near and dear to most firefighters, and that is the ability to train in the environment that they will be in when they are working. So, and the realism level of that and all that goes along with that. And of course, you know, all live fire is risky for firefighter safety. We all know that. Right. But I would say that today's firefighter is no different from 20 years ago in the sense that they want to be able to do everything in a practice, and that's fight fires as well, because that's really where you develop a lot of skills and what I like to call poise. Nice. Being comfortable in a fire, that gives a lot to a firefighter. Firefighters who can keep cool and have a plan in their head and are familiar with their environment. That's a big thing for firefighters, a comfort level, so to speak. And obviously we've seen in recent years how fire dynamics or fire behavior is a lot different in training fires and reality.
Yes.
So the point of the post was something that I've been thinking about for probably 20 years, basically. And let me just give a little bit of my history in this matter. So I think it was back in 2000, so 22 years ago, basically, I was invited to work on the live burn team at FDIC. Mike Lombardo was running it. Tim Klett was also running it. And Mike ended up being the commissioner of the Buffalo Fire Department. At the time, he was the captain. He was a captain. And I got invited to do that with them. And I had about 20 years in the FDNY at the time. And Tim was one of my firemen. He invited me out. And so I started, you know, I was in charge of the safety line. Right. I did the second due ladder company search. I wasn't involved. I wasn't the engine officer. So I learned it from the bottom up and what those different positions entailed and got to see how it was done. And the model that they used was, I believe, created by a chief in the Buffalo Fire Department. There's a very old article in Fire Engineering that references basically this model and the way it was done. And I will say all the years that they were there, they didn't have any injuries because of the fire. I think they had one injury, but it wasn't really related to the fire. Someone got twisted ankle or something like that. What I will tell you is that we did use the thermal imaging cameras, which were around in those days. We even recorded some of them. There was an ability to record what was on the thermal imaging camera. And we had some very strict policies. We were doing basically what people want you to do today. We were timing the ventilation. If it wasn't naturally occurring, we were timing it to basically when water was either in the room or we had an idea, we could hear it hitting inside the room, the window would be taken by the outside crew. And the fire attacks were coordinated by the engine officer who had the line, and there were some other things that went on in there, things that they've started to incorporate in this new standard as well. But we were doing it 20 years ago, and one of those things was that we did was they basically had an imaginary red line in the house. Now, we were in an acquired house, so they were all a little different, the layouts. Some are bigger than others, you know,
Sure.
Cape Cods to farmhouses and things like that, ranches. And they kept a hand line, an interior hand line between the fire room and the entry point. So if the fire room was getting a little out of control for whatever reason, or there was a delay, let's say one of the students had a mask issue and the room needed to be attacked at that point, they would do it.
Nice.
We would do it. That's what the safety line was for. And it was inside. And they, under their own discretion, with a camera assist by another firefighter, there'd be two people. There'd be the nozzle operator and there'd be the camera operator. And these two people would be there in concert with each other, in communication with the team. They would hear all the directives. Okay, the go signal was given. Okay, in a particular amount of time, you would see the nozzle team, the student nozzle team come up. And if you didn't, well, and things were getting a little crazy, all right, knock it back a little bit. So we always had that. The other big thing, another big thing that was always done was that this was an engine-centric hot class.
Okay. Okay.
Basically, yes, there was a truck search that went on, but it didn't go anywhere near the fire room, and it wasn't about trying to get in the fire room. That was off limits. It was about searching in other places. And again, under the watchful eye of an instructor. And that's where I got my start. And in years later, I was able to do a few of my own. I ran burns in Florida, did a burn in Florida, did some burns in Connecticut that I helped run, did some burns in up in Wisconsin. Another fellow that needs mentioning is Tony Piontech. Tony was a Green Bay firefighter at the time, and he had tremendous experience in live burn. And every year I do some stuff with him. And it was actually, we had some time with the instructors. We had about 8 or 10 instructors at this fire conference. And it turned out I think it was my idea, I forget, but I think it was. We built basically a plywood house, not a plywood house, a sheetrock house, I'm sorry. A sheetrock house out of 2x4s and available sheetrock. And we built a 4-bedroom house, not that big. The rooms were probably 8x8 each, very dimensional, you know, hardly any cutting needed to be done or anything like that with the sheetrock, and a hallway. And we had a run of the hallway, and then we had like an L-shaped hallway at the end that jogged off of that. And we did 4 sets in there. And what they used it for was arson detection the following day. So real furniture was used. So I've done real furniture. The other thing at FDIC, the first live burn I was talking to you about that I referenced was at FDIC, and we used real furniture. We used couches for the most part, or mattresses, basically, bedroom furniture. Mm-hmm. And we had a very simple ignition system, a torch and some cardboard, mattress or a couch, and we were getting the fires that you see today. We were getting those fires 20 years ago. And yes, they were very sooty, no doubt about it. And they were many times a blacked out condition. The biggest issue, I think, for firefighters today is when they're in this smoke condition is, when do I open up the hose line? That's probably one of the biggest questions that any firefighter would have. When do I open up the hose line? And I'll just have to say, well, it depends. Can't tell you exactly when to do it, but obviously if conditions are bad, if you're feeling heat through your gear, it's a good time to open the line, and it's always better to open it a little early than late. You could go back probably to the mid 90s, late 90s, and read Andy Fredericks when he talked about, opening up the line on smoke.
Right.
So it's taken a generation of firefighters to get more in tune with this idea. And of course, the furniture of today is very volatile. And, but let's also look at the other side. We had UL Burns, that I was involved in that study, the interior and exterior fire attack study. They were done successfully, over 24 burns. And there was no interior safety line. There was no, guidance on the inside. Basically what would happen was they had cameras obviously inside.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is all these fires, which were real furniture, granted, it was the same furniture in every room. They had the same things. Were handled safely and successfully. So we have that on our side. We know that can happen. We know it happens every day in this country. The hit that 1403 suffers from is some of the past fires that were really very poorly done, and there were deaths. Firefighters were killed.
Right.
And some of them, when you read the reports, are beyond the pale. You wonder, how is it even possible that someone could be at one of these live burns and think what's going on is okay? Like nobody thought there was something wrong with this idea.
Right.
So the vast majority of training fires are done safely. They're done competently. What I'm looking at, my idea, is a little different. It is, yes, use regular fuel loads. Yes, that is true. I do think there's lots of value in that. But one of the other things that comes up with 1403, of course, is using a house, a donated house.
Hold up, Ray. I want to interrupt you real quick. Yep. I want to involve the audience real quick and just throw some, because I don't want to break your flow because you're on a tear. I want to say,
go ahead.
Robert Ramirez chimed in and said, "Smoothbore Santa." I wanted to throw that at you. David Pruitt said, "This is going to be awesome." Steve Kaiser out of Australia said, "Really looking forward to this." So we're international tonight.
Wow.
Nate Schuler said, "The real engine company boss." And finally, Steve Robertson said, "Looking good, Roy." So I wanted to get those thrown in there before they went away.
No, that's nice. I appreciate all of that, obviously.
So back to I didn't want to break your concentration, but back to 1403 and not just about fuel loads, but about structures.
Right. So one of the problems, well, there's several problems, obviously. We'll talk about every one. One of the problems is frequency, of course. Even if somebody's able to get a house, how many houses are they going to get in a given year? It's not going to be a lot. It'll probably be a once a year opportunity, maybe two. It's not a lot. So, and in today's world, it's very difficult to get all that. There are so many hoops that a department has to jump through, and even the people that donate these things are, they're worried about, are they on the hook for something at the end of the day? I was fortunate, like I said, did a lot of burns in Wisconsin, and we were able to do the burns. And then at the end of the day, they would burn the house down pretty much, and then they had a contractor who would take care of everything. So nice. Once the fire was knocked back a little bit, they just basically bulldozed these things and it was over. So there really was no liability beyond that. But obviously towns and fire departments have to worry about these things, and there's costs involved. You have to strip off the roof. You have to make sure there's no asbestos in the place. If there is, you'd have to do an abatement, which, would be very costly.
Cost prohibitive, yeah.
Carpets have to be removed. No foreign vessels like hot water heaters and things like that. And, what is the condition of the roof? What is the condition of the floor? A lot of times when you have these places, you have to go in and do some handyman work to them to get them, maybe they've been vacant for a while and they really need some work. So these are all things that go into the process of actually getting a house donated. The other thing that happens with a donated house a lot of times is it may or may not fit what you're really trying to do because of the room structure, and it's also possible the people that are running it can't see the building being used a different way. I had a building in Oklahoma I did where we came in the main front entrance. It was a long house,
right.
A ranch house, but it was deep. So we came through the front door for a couple of rooms, but to vary it up, we took the back window out. We made a doorway out of it, which everybody should know how to do. That's not that hard. We cut the windowsill down to the floorboards and made a doorway out of that. And then we started to bring the line. We had the line set up out back,
nice.
And we used the house in a reverse way just to get more out of it, because if you went through the front door, the room would be right there.
Yeah, just a bit.
So to add a little bit, more of a challenge for the firefighters, we reversed the entry in the house.
Just adapting and finding a way to make it fit. Yeah, I love it.
Second half of the day, sure. So, I've seen that where we would get a house one time and it'd be, phenomenal house, plenty of rooms, no problems at all. And then you get others where you had to really give it some TLC because you were trying to fit in, say, 8 burns in a day. And a lot of houses, it's hard to come up with that. So sometimes you're blessed. We were in California one time at FDIC West. We had a big ranch house, beautiful home with a metal roof, which was very interesting for our people to work on. Rarely did we have metal roofs to work on. But we had a 3,000 square foot ranch that we did 36 fires in over 3 days. Tremendous amount of opportunity there. In fact, the master suite was as big as an apartment. It was like 4 rooms.
Right.
The closet was a room.
Right.
So, and I've also, truth be told, I've been to a few that were borderline bad, really bad. And I almost was in a flashover myself. And luckily I opened the line in time to prevent that. And I'm going to just say, these things happen and you have to be careful, obviously. Right. And it comes down again to when do you open the line? A lot of it's when do you open the line? The other thing is having a safety line inside. This one where I talked about the flashover just now, there was no safety line inside. And it was run by nice people, good, great people and all that. But when it comes to running a live burn, it can't just be that you're buddy with somebody. It has to be pretty strict. And even though it seems strict, it wasn't. It was a little loose on the safety end. So it's a lot to balance out for somebody. And, with today's concerns over health and safety, we have the safety concern, obviously, and then we have the health concern.
Right.
But let me just get back to another thing with I see how people will say, well, we've lost people at live burns. Yes. And I get that the standard was built on those and has been promulgated on those. But if you look at those incidents, they are just so bad. I don't believe they're typical. If they are, we're really in trouble. I don't believe they are typical. But what I do want to stop at is I don't think we can run something based on that.
Right.
I think we have to, yes, those were tragic incidents and we can never have them happen again. And we're a lot smarter than we were then. And whatever we need to bring that up is fine. But I don't think you can run away from the problem because you had some people that were not on top of their game. We can't let a future generation of firefighters suffer over the mistakes of the past. Those mistakes, tragic, obviously very tragic, and the people involved have to live with that, and that's terrible for them.
Right, no, 100%.
But at some point, when do you let that go and start something new?
Right.
You have to start something new. And I think the fire service is looking for new things to do. And so this idea has a few components. So the safety, of course, I mentioned the two things that I thought were very important, which was an interior safety line. There's other things. I mean, having competent, very competent officers, especially the person that's bringing the hand line, has to be the person that will take over the hand line if necessary and put the fire out. If the safety line, let's say, doesn't need to. Let's say the safety line is good, the nozzle team passes them, okay, everything looks good. All of a sudden there's a problem. Well, that officer, we'll call them the officer, that engine officer needs to be able to put that fire out, period. Never mind what the student's capability is. At some point, and this has happened in the past, at some point, that person has to be able to get it done. And those are the instructors you need, not just somebody who took a course. That's wonderful. But you need people that you can count on when the chips start to fall down. And if you don't have those people, you really shouldn't be doing a live fire exercise. And that's whether you're burning wood or you're burning a couch. Well, technically you can't burn a couch these days.
Right.
But the point is, no matter what it is, you need a competent officer. And yes, they should understand about fire behavior. That's obviously, they used to do a fire behavior segment in the class and bring people through that, cycle them through that as sort of like this is what's going to happen basically in the fire room. A lot of places do that, which is good. But to me, listen, if I'm going to put that person on as engine officer, I don't want to hear that you couldn't get it done. It has to get done. Period. Right. That's what you're there for. And I think once you have that in place, that's pretty good. And like I said, the injuries, I'm familiar with all the ones that they have listed and the ones that normally get listed. But if you really look at them objectively, you realize that, a few people were out to lunch that day, and it's a shame because firefighters died.
No, absolutely. Go ahead. So Kyle said we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And the other one I like to say is, one person craps their pants and now everybody has to wear diapers. It's the way the fire service reacts to things.
Yeah. And, and look, the people who do the 1403, they're good people. And they want the best for the fire service. This is nothing against the people who have worked on 1403. 1403 has been very near and dear to me when I started doing it. So I'm familiar with it. It's just, I think the fire service is in a change cycle right now. And I think that it would be nice for us to at least investigate possibilities. That's all. Could turn out it's not really what we should be doing. Okay. But I think this basically fear of the fuels is crazy. I think that's crazy. There's no reason why I should be worried about a bedroom set being on fire when tomorrow I'm going to work and go to a bedroom
on fire. Right.
That doesn't make any sense. Nobody's burning pallets in their house, as people say.
Right.
Now, then again, we're not going to go crazy. People who, I wrote a piece once called the Crescendo Fire. And basically it was the last fire of the day at a live burn where, all right, just throw everything on there, and make it the kitchen sink. That's not what you want to do. Right. You don't want to give firefighters a fire that they're fighting their life for. That's not the idea behind this at all. But it is an engine-based thing. You can do other things, that's true, but it's not the day for forcible entry, at least not while the line's waiting to go in. When the person conducting the event determines that the line should go in, then it needs to move in. And I think we should have those precautions in place, but once that whistle is given, it's time to move in, and these things should be timed. Excuse me. And the other thing that's interesting is the health aspect of all of this. So, firefighters will say there are some that don't even believe in live fire training, which I don't really get.
Right.
I don't really get that. I think it's kind of crazy not to have some fire training, but so let's just say, people concerned about other people's health. And with the toxicity of the smoke, yeah, that's all reasonable. That's fine. So when you do something like that, you're going to have rehab. You're going to have a decon. And the more robust, the better. That's
Right.
fine. That's the price of doing business. That's okay. We can build that in. In other words, when you come out, take all your, take your stuff off, cool off, get hydrated, wipe yourself down with some wipes. And then at the end of the day, obviously shower as quickly as you can and get your gear cleaned.
No, and how much better would those reps on that actually help us, in the real world reps of implementing those things, the showers, the wipe downs, the gear cleaning.
Well, it is another component of the fire service today. So yeah, I mean, you can practice your on-scene decon, like people wetting the gear down, removes like 80-something% of the particulates. So you do that, but then you get it, professionally laundered. That's a big deal. So we're not against the health and safety. That's great. Include all the health things you want, but don't forget about the fact that this is a vital thing for firefighters to take part in. All right, so you're fortunate enough, you live in an area where they got a donated house, it's big enough to do all the sets and reps you wanted to do. That's great. Once a year, what does that do for the average firefighter? I don't know exactly what it does for them. My ultimate proposal is this, is that we try and replicate these ventilation limited fires. Now, one of the things they've had a problem with in, concrete training structures is the fact that, they're very leaky. In other words, it's very difficult to get that type of fire. And, the way fires are done in those buildings a lot of times is, all right, come in, hit it a little bit, but don't put it all the way out because we want to be able to, get it fluffed up again and get the next group in here. So, for that, there's some learning there. And, I'm not going to knock that too bad, but that's not what we're talking about here. Here is more the graduation ceremony, if you will. This is the real deal.
Right.
So it's like, you work on a forcible entry door simulator. That's great. But eventually you should graduate to real doors with, locks on them. So you get an idea that a door will bend and crush on you and things that repetitive forcible entry doors may not do.
Can't simulate. Right.
Yeah, that's fine. But eventually you have to move up to the real deal so that when you are in the field, you can say, well, all right, I've already experienced something like this. This is not that foreign to me. Same thing with the fires. If the fires are all just fire and hardly any smoke or not representative of what conditions are today, then maybe we are building a false narrative for the firefighters. So years ago, one of the big fan companies used to build a house out of sheetrock, and they would do like 40 fires in a given weekend. The host place would make this thing. I don't know how many rooms were in it. Let's say 6. And they would do repetitive fires in there and use the fan, to show off how the fan worked. And that's basically the same way I'm going with this is if we were to make a house out of studs, sheetrock, some plywood underneath perhaps so you can easily fasten the sheetrock in at any point. This is not really a hazardous environment. There's no roof we have to really worry about. There's no floor we're going to fall through. There's no asbestos abatement, no ripping off all the shingles to the place. And we can build, like UL did, we could build a set model that we could then practice certain types of extinguishment in. In other words, you could have a hallway, let's say, fairly lengthy hallway.
Sure.
You could have that. You could have rooms that you have to pass through to get to the fire room, which would also allow us to judge the smoke condition that we have. In other words, you're you're 2 rooms back from the fire room. You can see that room has flashed over already. When are you going to open the line? What is the condition in the room you're in versus the condition of the next room forward? And obviously the 3rd room ahead is fully involved, so we know we can't get in there. So those types of learning things I think are possible. And imagine that if we had a standardized house throughout the country that we use, that was designed specifically to learn how to do certain things, then the same lesson would be learned in California and Connecticut.
Yeah.
There's value in that because you're not getting a small Cape Cod to work in that really isn't all that great. And you're getting this McMansion that maybe is developing fire behavior that is a little extreme. So we could have larger room. We could have a high volume ceiling room.
Right.
And I had a live burn with a master bedroom one time in New York where they had stacked a bunch of wood in the corner of the room, which, of course, gives you a quick reaction fire. And the engine company came in, they opened the bedroom door, and the fire room just got red, period. And I had the safety line inside. Well, actually, a young firefighter had it, and I grabbed it from him and operated it because when the engine came through the door, the line died. They had no water. Oh. So now they have the door open. This thing is just turned basically all red, got very hot very quickly, and, knocked it back a bit. They got their water very soon after that, and they were able to fully extinguish it. So the safety line did what it was supposed to do. We had a fire behavior there that people could experience, and we overcame an engine emergency of having no water by having a second line there. So would that happen in a plywood house? Yeah, sure, that could happen. Sure, there's no doubt that could happen. But if we look at the UL house that we had for that study that I mentioned, where we did the 2 dozen fires, that house, well, there were 2 of them, but that house was basically stripped down of the top layer of sheetrock and re-sheetrock. Now, there is a cost to that. Obviously, there's a cost.
Right.
But I think a fire academy could certainly handle that cost. If you look at some of the burn buildings that are used today, they're very expensive. They're metal. They're very expensive. We have the tiles. I don't think it's that big of an expense at the end of the day. For a given year, the amount of rotations you could get in something like that, I think it would be good. And the other thing is, I believe that the experience is important. It's when people are learning how to do something in a particular space, whether it's a narrow corridor, let's say a hallway. All right, there's a certain way you could operate the line, and you are going to obviously take care of any issue in that hallway.
Right.
But then when you get to a wider space, what's the nozzle technique you should maybe want to use?
No, absolutely.
So I think a lot of these things on a guided curriculum could help the fire service. And I'm not against donated homes. That's great. But I also think if we had a standard to use, and 1403 is a good model to use with it, obviously. But I also think we have to graduate to some sort of furnishings, real furnishings. And granted, it would be hard to get a standard. In other words, if a department wanted to do, let's say, 8 rooms in a day, yes, it would be hard to bring in 8 identical sets of furniture.
Sure,
I get that.
Sure.
So maybe a certain amount of, which is something they don't want to use, is polyurethane foam. Maybe a certain amount of foam has to be used in the room. How they use hay and pallets.
Right.
Or maybe it's allowed to have, a small couch or, a bedroom set of different, full-size bed, queen bed, whatever it is. Look, there's only so much fire you can fit in a flashed over room. It's not the room that's the problem. It's getting to the room that's the problem. So, it's really about how are you operating before you get there to cool off the environment you're going to travel through. You can't go into the room.
Right.
Obviously, you're going to have to wet it down before you get there. So I think with that issue and the fact that you could make the place pretty tight, which solves the leaking issue of these concrete burn buildings and such, I think is something worthwhile.
And something you made me think of just from while you were talking, the benefit to these newer members of the fire service coming in and actually building these, the building construction aspect of how a stud wall works and where sheetrock is. I mean, just stuff that they don't already, a header, etc. Just things they could learn off that, which is just a periphery benefit. All right. Are you ready for questions?
Yeah, we could do
Go
all
ahead.
kinds of different fires too. I mean, and we'd also be proving some of the things that we did in the study, which was, like the amount of water used to extinguish a fire. It'd be very easy to calculate that when they were done and say, listen, it took you 100 gallons to take care of this whole fire. All right, you have an engine down the street. What's your normal engine? Oh, we have 750 gallons.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you got at least over 600 left. That's great. So how do you respond? There's a lot of things that can come off of that.
Yeah. Get the gray matter working.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Are you ready for questions from the audience?
Sure.
All right. David Pruitt, this is the first question that got thrown out there, so I'm just reading the audience questions. Where do you stand on how we are creating instructors? The ability to present or create a presentation often is the only measurable thing to get you certified. Live fire instructors are and should be rooted in fire behavior and tactics. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I don't have any problem with that. I agree with that. Yeah, I'm not against formal training if that's the gist of this. I'm not against that, but I also think you have to have a tight knit team. I was offered an opportunity to do a live burn years ago in a place. I'm not going to mention where it was, but it was in the middle of the country, and I was like, okay. I said, I'll do it, but I have to be able to bring a few people with me. And they were like, no, we have people. I'm like, listen, I said, well, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. You get somebody else to do it. But I wanted people that I knew in a couple of key positions. I could deal with people doing other things. That's right. Like other things that weren't the nitty gritty. But when it came down to like who's going to be the engine officer or the truck officer, I was like, no, that has to be somebody I know and trust. So that's not a bad way to do things, by the way. If you notice, a lot of training companies and hot teams, if you will, they are basically based on the fact that they know that this person is good and that they'll be able to take care of business. And that's what you want.
Yes.
So when you see the integrity of these groups, they've kind of been tested on their own, so to speak. Not everyone does live fire, though. So, I'd be fine with an educational thing, but I also think it has to go beyond that. Years ago, there was a mini class you could take on it. And while that's great, you do get the certification and you get the knowledge of what's required in the standard. Your firefighting skills are off to the side, and we have to bring them up front a little bit. Yeah.
Beautiful. Alita Stadel-Bailey says, I feel people who ultimately run live fire trainings have had mentors and have learned how to develop trust in their instructors, which is kind of what you were talking about. But she says, in my area, fires are still few and far between compared to EMS calls. What are the steps I can take now as I'm gunning for my fire training captain? So basically steps to take to get better at live fire training.
Well, the only way to get better at it is basically to get involved in it. If you're involved in it, then certainly, you have to follow the guidance that's out there, obviously, and don't cut corners, because that's probably one of the biggest mistakes. And allowing others to influence you in what could be a negative outcome. You can't let your guard down. There are things that people will want to do, and maybe even try and sneak one past you, so to speak. You can't let that happen. You have to have tight control. I'll just tell you a little story. So I was at one years ago, and this chief was helping us, and I was in charge, and we were tucked in this room, and I told him, I said, all right, put your SCBA face piece on. So he's like, well, we didn't light the fire yet. I said, I know that. Put it on. And he was like, why? You know, and I was like, because I'm telling you to.
Right.
And, you know, I wanted you ready before it happened, just in case something unforeseen happens, you're ready. That's the point of being totally geared up. And you use that philosophy when you work. Like, just be ready. You know, something crazy could happen here, you know, that you're not expecting. And by being ready, all right, you handle it, not a problem. But you're going to fumble around now because it gets super hot in here. That's not the way to go. So I would just say to that person, don't cut corners, be a good example, and don't let something you don't like happen.
Love it. Joe Gavita asks, do you think with the Connex boxes becoming very popular as burn buildings that this could allow the slow implementation of using realistic fuel?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I definitely do. I think there's definitely a place for it there, most certainly. And, you know, those are typically, you know, smaller rooms, and that's fine. You know, it's like I said, the room is going to be fully involved. Usually that's how these things develop. And you'll probably have some fire outside of the room, and you can get that there, obviously, with that type of situation. I just think the problem is that we seem to be afraid to use fuels, and the fear comes from several places. Obviously, it comes from bad history.
Sure.
It comes from the hazard, the health hazard. And it comes from not being able to quantitatively say, all right, this couch is going to give me this, and this one's going to give me a little less. And, you know, is that a problem? But again, I think one of the big issues for us in the fire service is, when do we open our protection level? When do we open the line? Once we open the line, not that something couldn't happen, but the odds of it happening are decreased. And if we want people to operate successfully in the real environment, I think we have to train close to the real environment. Now, I'm not saying hay and pallets are a bad thing. They are good. They are definitely good. They bring us a long way. But I just see this as sort of a higher level.
Right. No, it makes complete sense. If you have any questions for Ray on this topic, get them in. I'm pulling up my notes here to see what else I had planned to ask you. You addressed that. I'm looking here. Paul Grimwood, he had a question for you that was on Facebook, so I'll throw it at you, which is basically, and I think you've kind of touched on this, so you can touch on it again however you want. He said, the issue here, Ray, is the competency of instructors and their understanding of fire behavior from a practical sense. And again, he's talking about those mistakes that have been made in the past. He said, history has shown us that such a training in uncontrolled environments managed by incompetent trainers kills firefighters. And
yes, 100% agreement. Yes. And like I said before,
right.
I'm not against training people and having a set curriculum for them to follow. What I'm trying to just modify is maybe we can get away from worrying about acquired houses and build our own house so that we can use the standard more frequently and use the experience more frequently. And then by doing so, by having this standardized approach to things, maybe that will open the door to allow us to use fuels that are based in the real world.
100%.
And then we would get to see what that's all about. I actually have an opportunity to actually do this. There's a fire department that's been generous enough to offer us the ability to actually do this, and I kind of foresee this probably happening in more than likely the fall. But and in between then and now, certainly open it up to different organizations that want to get involved, and people that want to just observe it, film it, do everything
and spread the word. Yeah,
highest level, that's fine. Like I said, UL did basically what I'm talking about.
Right.
So, and I was there for it, and they're squared away. and there's no reason why somebody using this type of prop can't be squared away. This is not impossible for people to do. You just have to have people at the top who follow the guidelines, and that's it. It's as simple as that.
Right.
The people that don't want to follow the guidelines are going to be rogue anyway. There's nothing I can do about that. No one can.
Right.
But we have to get away from the fear.
Fear-based decision
making.
Right.
Right. And leadership that's afraid. Our leaders they need to be at these things and see what's going on. Everybody that went to the UL, that they invited people, they had like an open day, and anybody who wanted could come to their burn facility and take it in for the day and see what was happening. I don't think anybody was nervous about what was going on there. And you shouldn't be nervous about this either, because we have an idea of what the fire behavior is like. We know the layout of the place. We're trying to come up with some standardized approaches to fire attack here. And we're trying to gain some learning lessons to pass on to firefighters that they can use when they get into the actual field. All good stuff. But we have to let firefighters experience what they're going to experience tomorrow. We have to let them do it today for tomorrow.
I love that, because it can't be the first time they see real fire conditions be their first fire after they're out of the academy for 6 months.
I mean, it does happen. It happens in a lot of places. So we're kind of underserving our new firefighters a little bit in that regard. And I get it. It's hard. You have to have a cadre of instructors at your training facility. These are not events that are easy to run. They're not run on the spur of the moment. But I think if you have a good model, like this model house we're talking about, if you have a working model where you can get so many reps in a day, whatever it is, and you don't have to worry about fire extension, any of that stuff, unless you want to build something that creates fire extension, that's fine too. But the point is, it should give you the confidence to use the real materials.
Beautiful. And one thing you said about fear-based decision-making, basing all our decisions off fear, it reminds me of someone's FDIC speech where they said too much safety and too much fear. I'm paraphrasing. Makes Johnny a poor firefighter. And again, I'm paraphrasing. But Timothy Ryan wants to know, Timothy Ryan Free said, I would be extremely curious to see a floor plan from Ray's idea of building our own homes. Anything specific he would include in the floor plan?
I'm sure you would love to see it. Well, I've worked on several floor plans for this in the past, and basically, when I spoke about that small house we built with the 4 bedrooms, well, what we did with that, because we weren't really great carpenters, we kind of cobbled it all together. If the ceiling went missing in the burn room, where we had the fire, we would just put a piece of sheetrock over the doorway. So now we only had 3 rooms to deal with.
Nice.
So whether something like that would happen, where we'd segregate part of the house, if there was damage in there, that would, cause another ventilation point that we didn't want, we would have to fix that, obviously. But there are some designs that I have where some reps could be given on certain types of fires. Like I talked about with the house with the longer hallway when we reversed the house. You could also have a fire where it's pretty much up in your face as soon as you open the door. That's another example of a fire attack. You go to a house or an apartment and boom, the fire meets you right at the door, which to me is always easier because we don't have to go look for it, but that could be a possibility. So yes, there are some design plans where we would incorporate different features that I've spoken about tonight.
No, that would be so. I'm so excited, man. You can put Disneyland in every firefighter's backyard. Howie Althusser, hope I said it right. He said, when proposing real life fuels, are you doing so more for the heat element, blacked out visibility element, or both? I ask because a small amount of polyfoam could give you the zero visibility effect you are looking for. So basically, what are you after? But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, I know that zero visibility is a factor, certainly. What I I guess my ultimate goal would be we want to have that fire. We want to have a black fire situation where, the student sees that this is a condition and they have to take care of it. I think that's the biggest thing. Like I said, the fire room is the fire room. It's the area going to the fire room that we have to figure out. I don't think the fire room's that hard to figure out. So to me, the approach area on the interior, if that's what we're doing, is, the area where we have to apply the water and we have to learn about how to do that.
Getting back to what you started with, when to open the nozzle, just making them make a decision.
Yep.
No, it's beautiful.
When and how. Yep.
Someone's asking about, it's not bad. See what your take is. How do we get the standards committee to get on board with real fuel loads when they are already trying to add OSB to ban fuels? It's a tough one.
Well, it's not going to happen in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day. I think one of the things when we do this, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to invite some of them out so they could see it for themselves. And, hopefully by then we'll be, in conference with them a little bit about it. And, they have great concerns and they have great reasons. I understand all that. This is nothing against what they're doing. This is, and maybe the possibility exists that, hey, if you're going to do this model, this is when we allow it.
Nice.
Anything's possible. I have no idea. But I'm just going to say that I think there needs to be some movement. Whether it's just specifically on this type of model, I'm fine with that too.
No, and you can't, the first step in anything, whether we're talking about going to AA or anything, you have to admit that there's a problem or admit that there's something to fix. And this is just trying to acknowledge it. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
saying,
I think the standardized house approach helps a lot because it takes the onus off of the hazards of a regular building. We know there's basically no hazards in this place. It's only the fire that's going to be the hazard, so to speak.
Yeah,
and if we can work with that element, and I know we can because we do it every day in this country. As a training module, I think we'd be okay with it. And, I don't know what's going to come out of this, but I think it's worth investigating.
No, and it's cutting out the variables, like putting more constants in place, just removing variables, and it's beautiful.
Well, that's what they want.
Right.
That's what the guidebook is about, really, is taking the variables and limiting those. And, I understand that the soot factor and all of that is something that people are concerned about. I understand that. I don't think that we're going to be ruining people's gear. That's not what this is about either. Firefighters, who are getting their gear ruined are not opening the line early enough, more than likely. So I think we can get a lot of good engine operations and fire extinguishment out of this.
Dude, I love it. Two more questions. Do you know of any opportunities for live fire instructor training besides just FDTN, or not just, but besides FDT?
The International Society of Fire Service Instructors have a 3-day program.
Oh, ISFC, but international. What are your thoughts about converting a double-wide aluminum ranch into a reusable burn building? And he's talking about a mobile home.
Yeah, I would imagine it'd be okay. If you're going to put studs in there and sheetrock it and do everything like a regular house, it's probably fine. Yeah.
There you go. Excellent answer. He said, thank you. There's a lot of comments in here. And Kyle has been great. And I didn't even mention Kyle. Kyle's in here pulling all your questions out and throwing them out here so I can throw them at Ray. I like to always mention him. One thing I didn't mention at the beginning, which I wanted to mention, was Firefighter Rescue Survey. I've made a promise to myself I was going to mention it in every scrap moving forward for a while, because I think it's very important to me to get the word out there to everybody how important Firefighter Rescue Survey is. I didn't do that earlier because we got going so quick.
Yeah.
100%. Beautiful. Okay, Ray, anything else you want to cover on the 1403 and live fire training? Because I think you have attacked and addressed a lot of issues there. Not even attacked is the right word, but just addressed.
Well, I mean, I know for a fact once we get rolling with this fire department that we'll be able to actually show the fire service what we're talking about. I know there's a lot of pieces to this thing, but I also think that I want to be an optimist about it, is that everything to me is still on the table because of the fact that I understand the concerns that are built into 1403.
Right.
UL has done studies on, the heat release rate of pallets and straw and real furniture and the differences between all that. And that's important information. So all these things are going to be combined. But we also know that this is possible to do,
right,
for firefighters, and it's possible to do safely. And more than that, some good decon afterwards. If you're going to do this, which would probably be done at a fire academy or through a fire department, it probably wouldn't just be done run of the mill, at least not initially. And I just think if you have all that in place, it's going to be fine. It's certainly going to be fine. It's no different than doing it in a well-run burn, except for the fact that with this, we could develop a particular curriculum that we want students to learn certain things, like I've talked about a little bit in the class here, about what to expect and what they can get from it. And those lessons can be passed on to our new firefighters. And that's, it's not that much different from the hose stream prop.
Right.
The hose stream prop, you can learn a lot of lessons using that thing. In fact, I just picked up something the other day while I was using it that I'm going to modify. But the more you use something, the more you find out about it. I'll just tell you a little story. Like when we did the Standpipe Stretches, we did them, myself and Jim Smith did them so often that we were finding things out about the stretch that nobody else knew, because we were doing them so much. And we were finding different ways to do different things. So the more you get your hands on something and have an opportunity to do it, there's going to be some really valuable lessons that come out of this.
No, I love it. And again, Dan Levesky asks, he says, what's your time estimate? He's asking for a Nostradamus hat. What's your time estimate on this type of change or addition to 1403?
I have no idea.
Right. That's why they
don't, they meet every so many years to revise the 1403. I don't know that I would necessarily harp on a broad change. What I think might be the way to go, this is all very, very preliminary, would be an addendum to the model.
Right.
That would probably be the best I could hope for, that if you use this model, used it under the direction of a fire department and, giving them, not only the curriculum, whatever instructor curriculum they needed, all of that, and laid it all out, I think that maybe then they'd be willing to do that. I think that would be fair. And then that would be something that people would try and get to, right, which would make it popular and maybe pay for itself, because there is a cost involved in doing all of that. So I'll know better by the fall. The reason I say the fall, spring's too busy, summer's off duty, and the fall is basically, a good time to do things. So, and it'll take a while to get this off the ground anyway. So these things happen. Nothing happens overnight, but I think there's broad support for this. So.
No, 100%, and getting the word out, just like this, talking about it, the way you are articulating what your vision of it and everything like that, and then spreading it through. You guys are all infected now, so go out there and spread it throughout your departments and start talking about it. And let's change the narrative. Started right here.
Well, I appreciate that, because that's why I called you. I knew who to call. I knew who to call to get it out.
That might be one of the coolest things anybody's ever said to me. So thank you. But
thank you. No,
Absolutely.
it's a great forum, and I appreciate you taking it on. It was very quick turnaround between the posting and this this show. So I'm in your debt for that.
Oh, I'm in. Anyway, anytime you call me, trust me, there's not many people who can call me and say, "Hey, I would like to talk about something." But you are on a very whatever you want to call it, the list that can do that anytime you want. Um, if you're willing, I've created, because you just did the scrap at the new year. You brought in 2022, and you just answered the next 5 questions for firefighters. So what I did tonight was I made up a custom set of 5 questions for firefighters. Did I lose him? No,
Okay.
there you're
No,
moving.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is a custom set of 5 questions for firefighters. No one else has been asked these. So Ray McCormack, are you ready for the
Yes.
Ray McCormack custom set of 5 questions for firefighters?
Okay.
Here we go. Number 1, biggest mistake instructors are making out there in the training ground.
Biggest mistake.
And I will, while you think, I'm going to tell everybody, usually I send people the 5 questions for firefighters before they come on. So Ray's getting these thrown at him. He's never seen these questions before, just so you know. I'm just giving him a little bit of a buffer there.
I would say maybe there are a lot of good instructors, obviously, but one of the big mistakes might be that subject matter depth may not be there. We can all kind of touch the surface on a lot of things, but and I think that comes with trying to teach too many things. So at some point, most instructors whittle it down to a few things because they know that they're not a jack of all trades. They can get by.
Right.
But I think you give the best to the student when, you're totally into this topic or whatever it might be. And you're allowed to have a few of them, certainly. But, somebody who's got their fingers in 10 pies, probably not that solid in all 10. That's not really the best thing. So if you're solid in your subject matter, I think that gives a student a lot.
I love it. Love it. And here's the deal. It's easy. No one else will ever be asked these questions, so it's easy to say max points because no one will ever be able to beat that answer. So I'm just telling you right now, I'm giving out. If you had unlimited budget and a magic wand, what would the perfect training facility look like if Ray built it?
Well, if I have a magic wand, do I need a training budget?
That's a great question.
What would it look like? Well, it'd be very smoky.
Chunky. I like it. This one may be too easy, but I wanted to ask it just in case, since this was if you could rewrite one NFPA standard of your choice, you get to do it. Which one would you do?
Really?
I thought it might be too easy, but I didn't know if you had another one hidden back there.
No. I think the one we're talking about might be the one.
I figured it was the gimme, but I wanted to check to see if there was something else that maybe you had a pet peeve for or anything like that.
No, I mean I do have a pet peeve about another one, but I'm not going to say that.
Okay. 1403 it is. Number 4, time machine. You have worked with a lot of people in your amazing career. You get to go back in time and be in your prime and make jobs with one crew from your past for 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
Put that crew together. And if it's too much of a spot to put you in, you don't have to answer. You can pass.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, I enjoyed I was a fireman in Ladder 24 in Midtown Manhattan, and I loved the people I worked with there. And, that's where I cut my teeth. And so we'll probably be there.
Beautiful. Man, I wanted to ask that one. I really did.
Yeah.
Final question. This one never changes. I don't care. It probably never will. Heavy fire, searchable space. You just got to answer it a few months ago. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on VES? So it's the same question.
Yeah, I think you asked me this.
Yeah,
one already.
I did. I don't think I'll ever change this question though. So I'm trying to make it a tradition.
Well, I will say this: working in the ladder company, we had a lot of guys who whose job it was on a rotation to do the OV, which is the outside ventilation position. And that is a tough position to do. You really have to have your stuff together to do it correctly. And it takes a lot of nerve to do that position. It's not about just breaking the window. It's about going in there and making a search in a sometimes very hostile environment. So I would just say hats off to all the firefighters that do that. And, obviously the nozzle firefighter is the tip of the spear, and we're putting everything on that person to be successful. And to do that, you have to give them a boost. You have to train them. So
nice.
Nothing comes free.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's kind of what a mantra that's been throughout this podcast tonight is nothing's free. I almost asked engine or truck, gun to your head, you had to pick one. You know what I'm saying? But
everybody goes.
Everybody goes. I love it. There it is. The custom Ray McCormack 5 questions for firefighters. Thank you for being an awesome sport. It's officially 136 scraps in the books. This one was all Ray's idea. Absolutely bringing the heat tonight. And guys, you've all been infected by his idea. And I mean that sincerely. Go back and start spreading and talking about it, and let's let it get traction, because that's what's going to ultimately make the change. If someone wants to get a hold of you, get more info, what's the best way to do that? And is there anything you want to talk about that you got coming up that you haven't touched on?
Well, FDIC is next week.
Yes.
That's a big week in the fire service, and it's no different for a first timer or a multiple timer like myself. It's a great week to see people you haven't seen, and I haven't been there in 2 years because I missed the one that they had last year, and it's going to be a great time. It always is, and it's the biggest show there is. Tremendous amount of education going on. I mean, you can't match the amount of classes that they have. And the other thing that I really love about it is seeing our industry there.
Yeah.
Our industry under one roof, from people selling Halligans to fire apparatus. It's all there. And I mean, to me, I love walking the floor there and seeing that whole show. And the week goes fast. Even, it's a busy week. It goes fast, and I hope people are interested in going. I think they are. It's just a unique event. There are plenty of great conferences, no doubt. This is a conference and a trade show, so it's a little different. And if you've never been, it'd be nice to take it in, because it's like nothing you've ever seen before. Usually I go to the auto show, which is in New York this week, actually. And that's a tremendous event. The show is just fantastic. The staging of the vehicles and the promotion and everything they do is just amazing. And awesome. It's just sort of our industry does a lot very similar to that. And you only really see it at FDIC. You won't see it at a small conference. You'll see a vendor with a fire truck parked outside, but you won't see the displays that they put on at FDIC. And it's just it says a lot about our industry. It's an opportunity to see us at our best, and a lot of the advancements come from the rank and file. A lot of people don't realize that. What we need, we tell them, and they have engineers that think about it, or we come up with the idea. I know plenty of firefighters that have come up with tools that are sold today, or modifications to things. So we are the industry. People think, oh, it's like a separate thing. And
right.
No, we are the industry, and we run the industry basically. And we have to think more about that. And that comes with an NFPA as well. I often tell guys, listen, if you're interested in, getting your foot in the door, apply, see if you can get in. If you have an interest in a particular matter, get yourself on the committee, get yourself involved. Standing on the sidelines isn't involved. So
beautiful.
We need more firefighters involved in these things.
Love it, man. I absolutely love that. And here's the deal. Like, you've got keynote speaker and like you said, multiple times. And you got, this is my first time to ever go to FDIC this year. So okay. I'm a first timer and multiple timer right here on the scrap. So I'm excited because, like, for all the reasons he just said, I'm super, super excited.
Yeah, you will enjoy it.
I'm looking forward to it. FirehouseVigilance.com. Go there. Hats are in stock. Shirts are in stock. Go there. excuse me, support the scrap. Keep it going. I never want to read ads on here other than stuff I believe in, like Firefighter Rescue Survey, which I mean it. If you haven't heard of it, go check it out, firefighterrescuesurvey.com. Absolutely one of the best things happening to the fire service. We are tracking our wins, the work they are doing, all of them. I won't say names because I'll leave people out. So just leave it at that. Firefighterrescuesurvey.com. Go over there. Next up on the agenda, like Ray just touched on, FDIC. If you're going to be there Thursday, 3:30 p.m., come check out my class. I don't want it to be empty. So if you're coming to FDIC, that's my plug, my shameless plug. Would love to get pictures with each and everybody because mutts don't scrap. Next up, Tuesday, Scrap with Ben Hepner. And then Nick Ledeen closes out April talking about Firefighter Rescue Survey. So I'm super excited. So there it is, all the housekeeping. LT, brother, you absolutely crushed it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
All right, brother, thank you for calling me because it was an honor. There is amazing things happening in the fire service, and thank you for keeping fire in your life. So for the audience,
365.
That's it. For the audience, thank you for being here. Thanks for the questions you threw at Ray. Thanks for being involved. You guys make the scrap awesome. And mutts don't scrap. I hope the tone stays silent unless it is burning. Stay safe out there.